What do you think when you hear that Donald Trump has ordered elite units such as SEAL Team 6 to land and seize Iran's Kharg Island, a lightning military victory? An economic chokehold to control global oil supply? Wrong. In reality, this is one of the most classic self-entrapment scenarios in modern geopolitics. Trump may believe he is the hunter, confidently stepping into enemy territory, but in fact, he is walking directly into a massive suicide trap that Tehran has long prepared and quietly laid out like a red carpet. Why would capturing a strategic island potentially mark the beginning of the end for U.S. dominance? Behind the glory of the amphibious landing lies a harsh truth. The United States is not seizing a gold mine, but taking over an empty graveyard of steel while turning itself into a target trapped within the enemy's fire envelope. Look deeper into this reality, and it becomes clear why a short-term victory could become the starting point of a long-term strategic quagmire. At the center of this scenario is the Trump administration, along with key figures such as Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, who have spent thousands of hours coordinating with Israel to prepare for a campaign against Iran. However, from another perspective, the real player controlling the game is the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, a force that deeply understands how its opponent operates. While elite U.S. units such as SEAL Team 6 and Delta Force are being deployed at scale, they may, in effect, become pieces in a scenario that Tehran has already prepared, reportedly with intelligence support from Russia. The very presence of these elite forces risks creating a strategic miscalculation, turning what was intended as an economic strike into a meaningless occupation trap. The core issue lies in the U.S. attempt to seize Kharg Island, the facility handling up to 90% of Iran's crude oil exports, in order to cripple the opponent's economy. However, this is precisely the self-entrapment trap, because controlling the island does not mean controlling the oil, as Iran can shut down the entire pumping system from the mainland just minutes before any U.S. landing. Instead of choking Iran, the United States would bind itself to a massive logistical burden, maintaining a presence on a barren island where volatile petrochemical infrastructure could turn into a firestorm at any moment. This operational deadlock becomes even more severe when considering both geography and timing. In spatial terms, Kharg Island is highly vulnerable, only about 8 kilometers by 4 kilometers in size, and located close to the Iranian mainland, making it a fixed target board for artillery and long-range missile strikes. In temporal terms, analysts suggest a landing might occur after financial markets close on Friday to avoid immediate shock, but leaked troop movement data from Oceania has already eliminated the element of surprise. The moment U.S. forces set foot on the island, that moment of victory may also mark the activation of an attrition trap, with sustained firepower launched from the mainland. Exposure to sustained fire at a fixed location like Kharg is precisely why many experts describe this operation as a form of military self-destruction. The reason this operation is considered suicidal lies in the chain reaction of economic and geopolitical consequences. The United States may believe that capturing Kharg means controlling the Strait of Hormuz. But in reality, it is the insurance companies that shut down the strait when risk levels surge. Iran does not need to destroy the U.S. fleet. It only needs to ignite a single oil tanker per day using low-cost cruise missiles to collapse global profit margins and drive oil prices sharply upward. Moreover, occupying Kharg would likely trigger retaliatory strikes against critical infrastructure of U.S allies, such as desalination plants in Kuwait, creating a humanitarian crisis that Washington would struggle to resolve. Every miscalculation behind this operation is reflected in how the U.S. effectively places itself into a noose through a high-risk amphibious scenario. And in your view, if you were a U.S. soldier standing on Kharg Island, holding a victory flag, but surrounded by thousands of Iranian missiles aimed at you, would you feel like a conqueror or a high-value hostage? Leave your thoughts below. Do you believe in the brute force of U.S. power or the calculated depth of Iran's strategic trap? The modernization of the U.S. The military bout, instead of being an unstoppable sword, is being turned by Iran into an Achilles heel through tactical miscalculations and overconfidence in raw power. First, overconfidence in open-source intelligence and large-scale force projection. The United States has conducted an unprecedented mass deployment with at least 17 C-17 Globemaster III strategic airlifters. These sky workhorses have transported elite, hard-hitting units directly from U.S. bases to Israel and Jordan. Estimates suggest that 800 to 1,000 troops from the 1st and 2nd Ranger Regiments formed the initial assault wave, along with 200 to 300 Special Operations personnel from SEAL Team 6 and Delta Force, tasked with seizing high-value targets. Additionally, between 1,000 and 2,000 troops from the 82nd Airborne Division have been placed on standby to reinforce the island. However, instead of maintaining secrecy, this massive movement has been visible on civilian radar systems. Iran, with strategic intelligence support from Russia, does not require advanced satellite systems to determine exactly which units are arriving, when, and at what coordinates. Once the element of surprise is eliminated, U.S. technological superiority inadvertently becomes a staged performance, pre-scripted by the adversary. Second, the empty fortress trap, seizing a body without a soul. The U.S. strategy is to deploy an armada of Apache attack helicopters, Chinook transports, and special operations forces to rapidly seize offshore platforms and critical pumping stations on Kharg Island. But in reality, Kharg is only the terminal point of a long pipeline system stretching from the mainland. With full awareness of incoming movements, Iran only needs to execute a simple action: shut down all oil valves from the mainland and evacuate personnel hours before U.S. forces land. After dramatic helicopter insertions and MQ-9 Reaper overwatch, U.S. troops would capture nothing more than a barren island filled with inert, non-functional infrastructure. At that point, the United States turns itself into an expensive facility guard, protecting an asset that no longer holds operational value, while the original economic objective disappears. Momentum. Third, the transformation into a static target, a caisson at sea. To secure and hold the island, the U.S. must station forces on a landmass only 8 kilometers by 4 kilometers. This limited space provides no effective cover for thousands of troops and high-value equipment against long-range firepower. Iran would not engage directly with large naval assets. Instead, it would rely on asymmetric tactics, including swarms of loitering drones, unmanned boats, and cruise missiles concealed within civilian trucks along the coast. Each night, U.S. forces could face sustained fire saturation from mobile bomb, hard-to-trace launch points. From a force of occupation, U.S. troops risk becoming high-value targets, continuously exposed within the adversary's targeting envelope. Finally, the economic counterstrike through the insurance system. The U.S. may assume that controlling Kharg equals controlling the Strait of Hormuz. But Iran only needs to set one tanker ablaze per day using low-cost missiles to collapse market confidence. Immediately, insurance companies would refuse coverage for vessels transiting the area due to elevated risk, effectively shutting down the strait without direct naval blockade. In this scenario, U.S. military action indirectly triggers supply chain disruption, driving oil prices to extreme levels, and placing pressure on its own economy and that of its allies. Do not view the American flag flying over oil tanks on Kharg as a symbol of absolute victory. In a geopolitical landscape filled with layered traps, it may instead represent bait, placed precisely where Tehran intended. President Donald Trump may achieve a technical landing success, but faces a severe strategic failure, with no clear exit pathway from the island without incurring significant cost. Occupying Kharg does not deliver oil, nor force capitulation. It creates a massive logistical burden and a fixed target for continuous attacks. Overconfidence in raw military power has drawn Washington into a scenario where it holds the blade, not the handle. The U.S. must supply everything, from water to ammunition, through maritime routes threatened by Iranian drones and unmanned boats, originating from Kuwait or Saudi Arabia. Meanwhile, Iran can simply wait, as the Pentagon's financial resources are steadily drained to sustain a presence on a strategically hollow outpost. Will Washington recognize that it is binding itself into its own trap, or will overconfidence push it deeper into a self-destructive conflict with no clear exit? Do you believe the U.S. can still reverse the situation? Or will Kharg become the next quagmire of the 21st century? If this analysis helps you better understand the situation, hit like and share. Don't let misinformation mislead. Subscribe and turn on notifications. Stay updated as the conflict continues to evolve by the minute. Thank you for following New Era. We will continue bringing you the latest strategic developments shaping the world.